Good evening. I think we'll begin at 7:03. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. I want to officially just announce who's present on the call with us as everybody's watching from home. Sorry we couldn't be doing this in person. We have President John Falco with us this evening, Vice President Richard Carviello, School Committee Woman Paulette Vanderkloot, School Committee Member Paul Rousseau, School Committee Woman Kathy Kretz, State Representative Paul Donato. We also have Chief Jack Buckley, Neil Osborne, Dr. Marice Edouard-Vincent, Zane Crute, Terry Carter, Dominique Wood, Ahmaud Abdul Malik Merchant. We have a number of our clergy representatives joining us as well. The Reverend Brenda Bennett, Pastor, Community Baptist Church, Rabbi Braham David, Rabbi at Temple Shalom, the Reverend Thomas Hathaway, Pastor at Hillside Community Church, the Reverend Wendy Miller Opade, Lead Pastor, Sanctuary United Church of Christ, the Reverend Carol Moorhead, Rector at Grace Episcopal Church, John Reddy, Pastor of Teams and Administration, Redemption Hill Church, Mark Steiger, Pastor at Venture Church, Paul Shuf Kazak, Curate at Grace Episcopal Church, Venerable Geshe Tenley, Resident Geshe, Karakula Center for Tibetan Buddhist Studies, Tana Turley, Lead Pastor at Redemption Hill Church, and Iman Ashan Waris, Iman of the Islamic Cultural Center for Medford. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here with us this evening as we unite as a community against racism and to vow to create change in the city of Medford. Tonight, we remember in particular Americans like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery. These are just three of the countless Black lives lost to unspeakable acts of violence at the hands of individuals who are sworn to protect their community members. In Medford, we will not tolerate racism. We will not tolerate violence, and we will not tolerate anything less than equity of all persons, regardless of race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or age. The calls and rallies for change that did not begin but were renewed in the recent weeks through vigils, community conversations, and transparency will continue in the days, weeks, and months to come. I am proud to have signed on to President Obama's call for mayors to pledge to address police use of force policies and to renew, engage the community, report our findings, and seek feedback, and to reform Medford's use of force policies. We commit to you today that we will be transparent about these policies and procedures and about all our actions and conversations about race, diversity, and equity in the city of Medford. I recognize that I can never truly understand the lived experiences, the inequities, and the discrimination that persons of color experience every day. But I vow to hear you, to support you, and to make change with you. Thank you. First, I'd like to recognize our first speaker, who is Chief Jack Buckley of the Medford Police Department. Chief Buckley has served as chief for the last 2 years and has been outspoken in his commitment to increasing diversity and equity within the department into a community policing model in Medford. Chief Buckley.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening to everyone. The events of the past few weeks have shaken this country to its core. We all became firsthand eyewitnesses to the murder of an unarmed Black man at the hands of the police. The death of George Floyd was inhumane and incomprehensible. How could anyone, much less a police officer, show so much callousness and disregard for human life? I have spent the last few weeks trying to rationalize what I saw. Yet no part of myself or my police experience can come to terms with what happened or how it happened. For many years now, policing has made overtures to minimize the excessive use of force that has led to countless deaths of Black, brown, and minority women and men, and yet those deaths continue to happen. We must do better. We must end these unnecessary deaths. So as we gather tonight, in remembrance of the lives of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, I remind myself that these three represent hundreds of others who have died unarmed in police care and custody. The police must work hard to keep the respect and trust this community has bestowed upon us. We must work harder to respect and trust this community ourselves. Mutual respect and trust is required for our better future. So I say their names: George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, so that they are not forgotten. I say the names George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery to remind myself of the shock, the sadness, and the shame associated with the continued unnecessary deaths at the hands of the police. I say the names George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery to remind myself of my oath to provide equal protection under the law to all people and to commit to eradicating systemic racism within the policing system. I say the names George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery because Black lives matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And I also want to thank Medford School Committee woman Jenny Graham, who's with us now, as well as Representative Christine Barber and Senator Patricia Jalen. Thank you for being here with us this evening. Our next speaker is Neil Osborne, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the City of Medford, currently serving as Acting Director of Human Resources for the city, works to increase and ensure equity, accessibility, and diversity of city services. Neil has also been actively working to recruit diverse candidates for city staff positions, as well as boards and commissions. Neil. Neil, you just gotta unmute yourself. Sorry.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We greatly appreciate your leadership in this area. Medford residents need their voices to be heard and to know that local government actually does hear them. So thank you for that. In my role as the city's Director of Diversity, I've often spoken about finding ourselves in the middle of a future challenge about race and belonging. I did not know what shape or form that challenge would take, but I understood it was coming. If we did not do the work prior to facing that challenge of learning how to talk to each other over differences, that challenge could break us apart. My instinct as the Director of Diversity is to try and be that bridge between cultures and race and religions and neighbors, to find a way to bring people together before a challenge is upon us. Well, that challenge is here now. The origin of that challenge did not come from within Medford, but we are far from immune from the challenge of the aftermath of a public murder of George Floyd and so many other persons of color who have died at the hands of law enforcement. In the role of Director of Diversity, I view myself as the bridge, working to bring people together. But today, in this moment, I can't be that bridge. I cannot best serve my community in this role. So today, in this moment, I take the liberty of lifting that burden off of myself, and I will talk to all of you as Neil Osborne, a Black man, a husband, a father, a son, a brother, a colleague, a neighbor, a friend, and to some, maybe a stranger who I've never met. I've grown up in this community. I became adult in this community. And as best I can be my authentic self, I want to share with you what I'm feeling. And I'm scared, anxious, and nervous for this country. It's not the general uneasiness of seeing a police car pull up behind you while you're driving down the road, or being stopped and questioned because you fit the description of someone that looked like me. Today, I'm nervous because I can see the pain and anguish in the streets of this country, and actually now around the world, which is encouraging, over the recognition that that Black people have not always received equal and fair treatment. And an outward manifestation of that unequal treatment is that a Black man can be murdered in public while a police officer presses his knee on his neck while being videotaped. And there exists a real possibility that this violent public act will go without accountability or very little accountability. What happened to Mr. Floyd is symbolic of the treatment of non-whites in this society, that you can be held down with a knee on your throat and enough of us or enough of you will look away or be distracted to want our collective lives to change. I'm anxious and I'm nervous because I see the protesters coming together to publicly demand accountability, come into conflict with local police departments who end up showing up to inflict violence on protesters with the authority and mandate to keep the peace. I've seen in my lifetime, and I know you have seen in yours, moments of public outrage in an attempt to change the status quo. We are again at that point of inflection. The path forward is uncertain, but I've seen how disrupted one march that pits residents against the police can leave communities scarred for decades to come. And the community that is scarred and remains scarred are usually communities of color. I will leave you with this thought. About 3 years ago, our local Congresswoman, Catherine Clark, posted a YouTube video. It had been after a senseless massacre, a gun violence massacre. In that video, she comes on to state she apologizes to future gun violence victims for Congress's failure to take any meaningful action. Today, I invoke that same message. I apologize to future Black men and their families and other people of color who will undoubtedly lose their lives at the hands of police brutality. I apologize. I apologize for all of you that you could not do enough, quick enough to save them. The question that my apology for the future, I hope, leaves you with is not an acceptance of inevitability, but rather a challenge of what will you do differently tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, over the next decade. What will you do to reduce and eradicate racism in this country and in our own community? The challenge is to you, privileged white America, with the privilege of your whiteness in this country, privileged white residents of Medford. When you see acts of unequal treatment, Can you and will you take the uncomfortable step to challenge another person's actions in the moment, right when it happens? Can you have the courage of a 17-year-old young lady who stood witness to the brutality of, unfortunately, Mr. Floyd's death? If enough of you are serious about making racism and racist acts publicly uncomfortable, then I'm hopeful that we collectively, in my lifetimes, that vigils like this and remembrances like this are things of the past that are recollected in only our history books. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. We have the pleasure of having Dr. Marice Edouard-Vincent, Superintendent of Schools, with us this evening to make a few comments. Thank you for being here.
I want to say also thank you again, Neil. Thank you for your words. Good evening. We gather here tonight to honor the souls of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and so many other Black lives lost senselessly through inexplicable acts of violence. In addition to serving as your district superintendent, I am the mother of Black children. It is with a heavy heart that I find myself having difficult conversations about worst case scenarios with them, family, friends, and colleagues. The global protests have demonstrated and confirmed that racism is real in our country. Racism is not a figment of our imagination. Race continues to define how people are perceived, and how they experience their daily lives. As I gather with you tonight to mourn the unacceptable murders of countless Black lives, I also urge you to pause and reflect, Selah, on the ways that racism continues to define our country, Selah. Moreover, I urge all of us to reflect on what we can do as individuals and as a collective Medford community to change this narrative. Being part of this vigil is a good first step. Last Friday at Hormel Stadium, during the Black Lives Matter peaceful gathering, it was gratifying to see so many people from all races, young and old, students, elected officials, business owners, and faith leaders come together in a space to share prayers, poems, and thoughts. In order to change the narrative of racism in our country and community, it will take the voices and actions of all of us. We need all people, including our white allies, to engage in this work, no matter how uncomfortable or challenging it is. At the same time, we need to be thoughtful and intentional in how this gets done. My true hope is that this new awareness around race is not just a fleeting moment that passes us by, but one that leads to major transformational change of our society. It is time for all of us to step up individually and collectively to end racism. We must do better. We can do better by not repeating what is wrong, and equally important, not being complicit when we see something that is wrong. Speak up, stand up, and make a difference when it needs to be done. We must stand together as one, not apart. In the words of our former president, Barack Obama, we are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. So let's get to work. I start each day with prayer and reflection because it keeps me grounded, and my faith in God is incredibly important to me. I would like to end my remarks with a portion of a universal prayer, the peace prayer of St. Francis. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. And lastly, I would add, where there is racism, healing. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dr. Edouard-Vincent. We were also joined by Representative Sean Garbely with us this evening and Medford City Councilor Nicole Morrell. So thank you for joining. Our next speaker is Zane Crute, who is the NAACP Mystic Valley Branch President. Thank you for joining us, Zane.
Thank you, Mayor. Can everyone hear me now? We'd like to acknowledge the deaths of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, amongst the multitude of others who have lost their lives and their murderers have gone unpunished. I've had numerous experiences in my own life with police officers. In my formative years, I've been stopped. I've been searched for guns and drugs. New York City, stop and frisk, that's happened all the time to me. But one time that really sticks out to me was in my hometown of New Jersey. It's a town that's very much like Medford, same fabric, same type of town, same type of people. They call themselves a diverse town. Well, I got pulled over for driving 35 miles an hour on a street I wasn't even on. The irony of this was the street's posted speed limit was 35 miles an hour. My father always taught me growing up, though, that not argue with a cop, don't question him for that, so I let it go. But this experience of being stopped ended up me being there on the side of the road for an hour and a half, being searched by the police officers, 3 different cars for guns and drugs. I was 16 or something, maybe on my learner's permit. I didn't even know what drugs were at that point. There's things like this. I could have easily been George Floyd just for what? Just wanting to go to the mall? Treating everyone like a criminal was never supposed to be the purpose of police officers. That's not what it's supposed to be about. Accountability in a more just policing system in America has been long overdue. The American people have spoken. They are tired. You guys are tired. We're tired. I'm tired. Defunding the police and other systems are being discussed right now. We're not going to get into that of which merits are right, which are wrong. All I'm sure of is we need to call for justice. We need a more just society for now. We need justice for the lives that have been lost. Abolishing the police is not the standard I'm going to stand here and state right now. The NAACP demands higher standards for our police officers, understanding that they're an essential part of our society. We are calling out for a ban on the use of knee and chokeholds, 6 steps of de-escalation to be used before violence is used, police misconduct files being visible to the public, citizen review boards, and one of the most important things is unbiased juries. We don't want police officers and police friends on these juries. That's not holding people accountable. The Mystic Valley area branch of the NAACP has been involved in the Medford community for over 40 years now. Joining us now is more necessary than ever as we try to advance to a more just society. Now is the time to do more than just post a black square on social media or write Black Lives Matter on social media. Now is the time to support the NAACP and join us. Let's go to a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Zane. Our next speaker is President of the Medford City Council, John Falco.
Thank you, Mayor Lungo-Koehn. And it's an honor to be part of this program tonight. In the aftermath of the killing of George Floyd, the call for systemic change has been voiced by countless citizens throughout our country, and rightfully so. The action of police officers who caused his death and the many that have preceded it compels us to assess, review, and change the organizational practices and behavior of law enforcement, the judicial system, and prison reform, just to name a few. Inequality and prejudice have many causes. They are the children of hatred, fear, and insecurity. They grow unchecked when we are indifferent, when we look the other way, when we are silent. In our legal system, the fight for justice and equality have been built into our laws since their inception. Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall described these core exclusions on the occasion of the bicentennial of our Constitution. Justice Marshall said, "When our country's founders used the phrase, 'we the people,' they did not have in mind all people. Slaves were not considered people. They were bought and sold as property. Women did not have the right to vote. It would not have it for over 130 years. Justice Marshall also said that the miracle of our Constitution was not its birth, but rather its life. He said that we should commemorate the suffering, struggle, and sacrifice that has triumphed over much of what was wrong with the original document and continue to work to achieve hopes not realized and promises not fulfilled. Such an effort requires that every person in every government official engage in a clear assessment and review of their viewpoints, of their behaviors, and of their hearts, so that we as Americans can make our proclamation of liberty and justice for all is more than a hollow anthem, and instead be the intentional foundation of our actions, words, and efforts that foster a reality that reflects liberty and justice for all in fact and substance." So I offer two humble thoughts to follow through on my personal commitment to avoid the rhetoric and offer change. The first is to propose the manner, methods, and results of all municipal police hiring and promotional practices be reviewed and appropriate emphasis be placed on racial, cultural, and social class sensitivity. The second is a review of our city's procurement practices. We need to assess in real numbers the level at which minority businesses or businesses that are owned by women and being awarded multiple contracts, municipal contracts. The city spends millions of dollars each year on independent contractors for a variety of reasons. We are a government of the people. We should be spending public funds on the people. I will not close with a clever quote or words crafted to make you feel good as a listener. I will close by giving you the only thing I have to give you. I give my continuing word that I will work for change. God bless you, and thank you.
Thank you, President Falco. Next up, we have my favorite poet, who was raised in Medford, Terry Carter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a young person, I was always taught to respect law enforcement and govern myself with dignity and obedience. This is a difficult place for me to be, and yet here I am. I am a minister of the church and an ordained deacon. I offer this reflection in hopeful love and painful truth. This is my call and response. They shoot black boys, don't they? A tragedy in 5 acts. Black boys spied from the cruiser seat. No real crime, just walking the street. Always wary of prowling heat, terrorizing their urban beat. Wrong place and time for them to meet. Vicious cycle about to repeat. Bullets fly toward running feet. Shots rain down like hail and sleet. Body slumps over, no heartbeat. Covered quick with a rubber sheet. Cell phone nation begins to tweet. A cancerous violence, whole and complete. Removed from justice, surgically neat. Officials expressing regret, then retreat. Community mourns, death and defeat. Asphalt altars rise, bittersweet. It's like they're nothing more than meat. Makeshift shrines adorn the concrete. Shot down like frightened deer to eat. They shoot black boys, don't they? That thin blue line continues to roll. Watching black youth like fish in a bowl. Conspiracy theories out of control, but no one shoots from a grassy knoll. We can't escape the daily patrol that chills our lives with the lives they stole. Candles and notes by the telephone pole, expressing our family's tortured soul. How do we fill this deepening hole? Is staying alive such a lofty goal? This public assault is taking its toll. Scary voices as dark as coal never seek to calm and cajole. A president's outbreaks coax and cajole as Twitter minions spew vitriol. The internet haters steadily troll as senators suck on the public dole and hide in plain sight from their public role. They shoot Black boys, don't they? Beyond the movie and TV themes, the Facebook chats, emojis, and memes, this is more real than it ever seems, pledging community into extremes. Death in our nightmares, death in our dreams, brown kids caught in police high beams, Black men subject to violent schemes as squads band together like mafia teams. Protest marches are shown on live streams as onlookers weep and America screams. A cauldron of race just simmers and steams, invoking religion only blasphemes, and the legal solution never redeems. So fires rage in hostile regimes as a neighborhood comes apart at the seams. The police state builds with iron beams, and many deny that the badge still gleams. One man rebukes what another esteems, and the fate of our children haunts our dreams. They shoot Black boys, don't they? A question asked, a statement made, another mother's hopes betrayed, as men in blue make bullets cascade, and even as their guilt is weighed, they get desk duty, they still get paid. It wasn't even a legal raid, but another mother's son to rest is laid. His hulking presence emerged from the shade. They saw the thug that is always portrayed. His actions made them so afraid that his keys looked like a razor blade. All training was lost in a cruel charade by roguish cops gone renegade. Yes, that's the way the game is played, by a public servant's masquerade, by a scared peace officer's fusillade. This is racism on parade. This is the curse of bias displayed as another Black boy to rest is laid. They shoot Black boys, don't they? We're all waking up to a tragic newsreel where pools of red blood begin to congeal. Beyond the precinct and far afield, assault-style ordnance is what they'll wield. Stockpiling mags with ultra-high yield, Confederate banners no longer concealed. Alt-right militia, supremacist zeal, courting race war as a fruit to peel. Wives and kids eat the same happy meal. Question, to what altar do they kneel? How do they bring Christian faith to heal? What strange voice are they hearing squeal? What lack of conscience does this reveal? How do you think it makes us feel? This calculated and deadly ordeal, historically bound but so surreal, the noose replaced by the Glock and steel, the new Klan riding and taking the wheel, rubber stamped by a president's zeal. And they shoot Black boys, don't they? Thank you for allowing me these few moments, and let's continue to endeavor to make Medford equitable, just, and tolerant. A great city in the valley that refuses to be hid and refuses to hate. Good evening.
Thank you, Terry. We have Dominique Wood, who is a Medford resident, a Black Lives Matter activist, Medford High School graduate, current college student. Dominique got about 1,200 people together last Friday at Hormel Stadium for the wonderful, peaceful rally that we all witnessed. So Dominique is going to list 100 lives that have been lost. Dominique.
Thank you. Today we come together to honor the millions of Black lives lost, not only to police brutality, but blatant racism as well. These are Black lives that will never prosper, Black lives that will not get to experience the beauty that still lives within the world. Black lives that were taken way too soon. We honor those Black lives that have passed by pledging to protect and fight for the ones still living. Change must be brought to the Medford community, and I vow to do everything and anything I can as a citizen to make sure that happens. And I hope all of you will do the same. Keep educating yourselves. Keep attending protests. Keep signing petitions. Do anything but stay silent. In order to make the world a better place, we need to start with the community of Medford. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominique.
Would you like me to read the names now?
We actually, yes, we have one more speaker who is the Tufts Muslim chaplain, Imam Abdul Malik Merchant.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The struggle of the disenfranchised people against oppression and tyranny on American soil is older than the country itself, beginning with the genocide of indigenous people and then continued by the enslavement of African people for capitalist gains. The long history of the Black freedom struggle is one of a continuous movement flowing like a river. The scholar and social activist Vincent Harding describes this river as something powerful, tumultuous, and rolling with life. At other times, meandering and turgid, covered with ice and snow, seemingly endless winters, all too often streaked and running with blood. The weight of this river is a constant source of anxiety and anguish, particularly among Black folk, with which we see manifesting today. For too long, we have lived with a sense of double consciousness, always looking at oneself through the eyes of the other, of measuring one's soul by the tape of the world that looks on in amazed contempt and pity. Now, the tide of this metaphorical river surges, breaking the levees of political acceptance and political correctness and social acceptance. Frederick Douglass said in 1857, which is 6 years before the emancipation, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who possess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, and it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle." Frederick Douglass said this at a time before we had our gender sensibilities that we have today, so I apologize if that statement offends anyone. As we figuratively journey through our lives, we must remember that our bodies are a trust from the Creator. While our physical bodies serve as the boat that carries us and our limbs as the oars that move us, the energy source that thrusts us down this river of struggle for freedom is undoubtedly our hearts. No matter how long the canoe and efficient the oars, without energy, our journey at best will produce meager results. Thus, our heart requires very intentional care. We must care for the external, nurturing healthy emotions and prioritizing self-care, and for the internal, building a fortifying and connection with ourselves and something transcendent. I pray and ask God Almighty to give us peace and tranquility to all of us, and to allow us to be conduits for healthy, positive change within ourselves and within society. Amen.
Thank you. Now, Dominique, yes, please, if you could run through your list.
George Floyd, Emmett Till, Breonna Taylor, Kendrick Johnson, Corinne Gaines, Ahmaud Arbery, Ariane McCree, Dante Parker, Michael Brown, Tyree King, Sandra Bland, Tiara Thomas, Shakuri Said, Walter Scott, Azelle Ford, Jerome Reed, Freddie Gray, Tatiana Jefferson, Pamela Turner, Samuel Du Bois, Philip White, Yvette Smith, Stephen DeMarco Taylor, Philando Castile, Maya Hall, Stephen Clark, Miriam Carey, John Crawford, Yolanda Thomas, Craig Demps, Shelley Frey, Darnisha Harris, Marlon Brown, Bill Jackson, Oscar Grant, Dante Hamilton, Ayanna Stanley Jones, Chantel Davis, Tamir Rice, Rakia Boyd, Trayvon Martin, Melissa Williams, Erica Garner, Justin Howell, Jamel Floyd, Betty Jones, Drayshawn Reed, Regis Paquette, Natasha McKenna, Botham Jean, Michelle Shirley, Riddell Jones, Tanisha Anderson, Marielle Franco, Kenny Watson, Laquan McDonald, Akai Gurley, Romaine Bribson, George Mann, Frank Smart, Anthony Hill, William Chapman, Brendan Glenn, Jonathan Sanders, Joseph Mann, Salvador Ellswood, Albert Joseph Davis, Darius Stewart, Billy Ray Davis, Michael Sabi, Brian Keith Day, Christian Taylor, Troy Robinson, Felix Kumi, Junior Prosper, Dominic Hutchinson, Alonzo Smith, India Kagger, Levante Biggs, Jamar Clark, Dominique Clayton, Alton Sterling, Christopher McCorvey, Antoine Rose, Eric Reason, and Mary Truxie. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominique. That's the reason why we're here tonight. 100 of many lost. At this time, we are going to take a moment of silence. I invite you to close your eyes or light a candle. We'll give you a minute to do so, and then we're going to take a moment of silence for all the lives lost. Thank you. In closing, I would like to thank all of our speakers this evening. Thank you all for joining, clergy, city representatives, as well as everybody watching from home. It was a moment of silence and an evening that is just the beginning for the city of Medford. We're going to work together, the police department, the elected officials, the clergy, the residents, and department heads to make change and end racism in Medford. So I thank you for joining us, and I look forward to the conversations to come. I know that the Human Rights Commission, as well as the City of Medford, is hosting our first conversation on the 17th, next Wednesday, where we will have a lengthy discussion. All are welcome. And that's just the beginning. So I appreciate you being here, and we have a lot of work to do, but we're going to get there. Thank you.